Hi, welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout, where humor meets healing with bite-sized chunks of wisdom and techie tips. I'm Toni Teixeira. I am a therapist, entrepreneur, recovering overthinker, and ethics nerd.
Hi, and I'm Jackie Toll, an entrepreneur, unapologetic spreadsheet addict, and low-rent stand-up comedian. So hey, Toni, how you doing this week?
I'm doing okay. I'm like in recovery mode. There's a
Yep.
lot going on last week and just kind of pulling it all together. But I did have something really exciting and fun to share. I'm like really proud of me and my husband. We do ballroom dancing
Oh,
and
how
we've been
cool.
dancing. Yeah, it's very cool. And we've been dancing for a couple of years now. Now we're not like your usual like regular couple. We can't go every week because we have some other commitments. So what takes people maybe 6 or 8 months to do, there's like different levels. There's like bronze level 1, bronze level 2, and you kind of test into the next level, which is really exciting, and they allow you to take new classes. Um, so it took us a really long time. I don't know. We've been taking dance classes for maybe about 2.5 years now. And last night we were practicing before our individual sessions. So we have individual sessions and there's class sessions. They also do these cool things where they have parties and you get to practice.
That's so
And one
cool.
of the instructors came over and said, "Hey, do you guys mind demoing the Roomba for us? There's a new couple here and we'd love for you to show them." We're like, "You want to use us as a demo?" So we were like, we just thought it was like really cool and a lot of fun. And it really made us think about how much we've learned. You know, every week we go like, "Oh
Right.
gosh, here we go. I forgot what we learned last week." But it was kind of like that shift in the moment of like feeling like, "Oh wow, we have learned
I got
something." And
this, yeah.
we have a really good time. So it's really cool. So I'm kind of living in that high a little bit.
Nice, that's
How,
awesome.
how about you? What are you vibing this week?
I went down kind of a weird rabbit hole, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but I kind of started getting into like quantum mechanics and quantum physics and like history of physics and stuff like that, but like wanting to tie it into one of my other passions, which is like really like trashy reality TV or like, and so
Physics meets reality.
I'm trying to like come up with these like explainers for different concepts that like are reflected in things that happen on some reality TV shows I watch. It's a very random rabbit hole that I went down this weekend, but it's a project I'm excited about, so we'll see how it goes.
Any examples? You have an example of like, I would love to understand how this reality moment has something to do with quantum mechanics or physics. What did you say?
Yeah, well, I mean it's both.
Yeah.
But hold on, let me see. I'll go over to my notes app. If I can find it. So, like explaining the idea of like superposition. I don't know how familiar you are with these things, but like using like scenarios that happen on Below Deck, for example, that's where I'm working on this one, to explain sort of like what superposition means as it relates to quantum mechanics. So anywho, we'll see if that goes anywhere. But it was a fun random diversion that like I spent ungodly amounts of time on this weekend.
Sounds like fun. I'd like
Yeah.
to see where that goes.
Yeah, we'll see if it turns into anything. Who knows? It's turning in, it was at least a good time for me. So we'll see. We'll
Sometimes
see.
it's fun to be curious and it's fun to learn. It's a lifelong passion of mine to be a lifelong learner. So I love that about you, Jackie. I mean, I think that the more we get to know each other and work with each other, I appreciate you more and more and
Aw.
find out that like you're somewhere else in the world and there's a lot of similarities between us in the kinds of things that we like. Even though I'm in the mental health field, you're in the tech field. I think there's some kind of similarities in some ways.
Absolutely, definitely. There's
Yeah.
a lot of overlap there. That Venn diagram has those are always my favorite thing as a kid. Well, I'm excited to dive into our story today. Um it's a story about technology, power, and the invisible rules that shape what we have access to in these tech ecosystems. It's something I learned about from a podcast I love called The Indicator by Planet Money. It's an NPR podcast. And before we jump into our story, I just have a little thing I want to say about public radio, if you don't mind, Toni.
Would love that.
I love public radio. I grew up watching PBS and listening to NPR my whole life, huge fan. The cuts to federal funding has a huge impact, especially on rural and tribal communities. There is a super cool website called adoptastation. We'll link to it in our notes, and you can go and see how much funding different stations by state have lost, and then they also have an appeal to why their station is so important and could use support. So if you can, please check that out. It's a super vital resource, and I just wanted to throw them a plug. So
Thank you so much for sharing that. Fantastic. I love that. Yeah, thank you.
this story that specifically, though, relates to an app called Ice Block. I don't know if you heard about that. Did you hear about that app, Toni?
I didn't hear about it until I listened to this podcast.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did not know that this existed. Why don't you talk a little bit about what the app does, and then I'll tell you what I did hear.
Okay.
Not about this app though. But go ahead.
Awesome. So, I mean, it was a really straightforward app. I actually have an app that's super similar to this, but it's for public fruits and vegetables. It's called Falling Fruit. And you can look wherever you are in the world and see where are there trees that are accessible to the public that you can get free stuff from.
Like that too. But
Oh,
you
that's
can
so
find
cool.
toilets. You can find toilets
Oh, look at that.
anywhere in the world. Yeah.
So these are the types of apps we're familiar
free
with.
public toilets.
I love that. That's awesome, especially important on vacations with kids.
Yes.
But IceBlock was launched really quickly to just sort of be a way for communities to communicate if, people in unmarked vehicles with masks and no IDs show up and start grabbing people, right?
Yeah. What was really interesting, though, the guys started this app in January 2025. Before this was happening, he actually thought ahead by looking at Project 2025 and seeing that this was a possibility.
Yeah.
That this could happen. So he actually launched it before anyone was using it. What I had heard, though, I didn't know about the app, but I knew people were calling each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said, that's what I had heard. So it was really surprising. And I thought, really innovative to hear that they created an app that's kind of like Waze and, some of the apps that we were talking about where people could actually notify each other. And the number of people who were subscribing to it went through the roof from 3,000 to 1.4 million in a few months.
Wild.
Crazy.
Yeah. But understandable, when you see things that were happening in LA and Chicago and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Now North Carolina.
Yeah. And so the administration went to Apple and asked them to remove the app from their app store. And they complied.
Why is that, Jackie? Why is that? Why did they ask?
I would say their argument would be that it puts the officers at risk of, people using that information to do malicious things.
Like what, Jackie?
Go after them, protest, maybe show up in a unicorn costume,
Chicken costumes.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of actionable, maybe I'm sure there are things that are bad, right? But think it was in an overabundance of caution for the forces, which
I'm sort of baiting you because I actually looked up the statistics because I was really curious about this. Yeah. So I looked up in 2025, 0 numbers of ICE agents were killed in the line of duty, but 20 people as of October 23rd have died in custody of ICE.
That feels even low, though. I mean, it's a horrible number, but
it feels low, but it's
horrible.
There is a number of people who have died in ICE custody. And of course, we don't want anyone to die. I mean, I would be terrible if there were ICE agents that were killed. But the reason I was kind of pressing that button a little bit was because the rationale that this would be a bad thing is that ICE agents would get harmed, not public would get harmed, right?
Yeah.
That was the first thing. And the second thing is people are not harming anyone. They're trying to be safe themselves.
Right.
And there are people in custody who are getting killed and harmed. I don't have a number of people who were harmed. This is people who are killed. So, I'm sure there are other injuries and other things that are going on and false arrests.
Mm-hmm.
People who were actually citizens who were getting arrests, and then all the ramifications that can happen for those people. So
for sure.
That's why I was kind of pushing it a little bit there.
I love that you looked that up because that is I hadn't looked it up, and it's, important to call to mind, like what really is the legitimate concern on the other side, when you're looking at, like, in practice, have things happened? And of course, you don't want to do something that risks something happening, but, sorry, I did something weird. There we go.
Right, but the intention of the app is for people to feel safer or to help other people feel
Right.
safer. It was not intended to do harm, and it doesn't seem like that's why people were
We're
using
using
the
it.
app.
For
And Apple originally said, "This is a great app. This is fine. This you're well within your First
Right.
Amendment rights. This is free speech." That's
And
not what
think about it for any other thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure, like, what's that neighborhood app?
next door.
Next door, yeah, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, that's something where people communicate, "Hey, there's a sketchy person here," or, whatever.
that's true. Ring
This is
Ring
just kind of a
cameras do this too. People can alert each other on Ring
yeah, yeah.
of things that are happening in the neighborhood. I see people lurking and dogs, less pets. I
Aw.
get alerts for those. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's interesting. And so it's like it's allowed for certain things, but not this. This was obviously something, that was frustrating to the administration, but not doesn't have a lot of, like, seemingly, like, strong evidence to back up a real need for. But if you're in the Apple ecosphere, you have a device that you paid for that now you can't access apps or things that you want to on it because they control the whole ecosystem. And I think that that's sort of that's like your landlord or your mortgage company coming in and telling you what you can talk about at dinner, kind of, in my
Mm,
opinion.
yeah. Well, the app got removed. I think do the people who downloaded it prior got to keep it, but
Yeah.
nobody new
Nobody new could download it.
can download it, right? So now we have a limited number of users. It can't be used. The fact that it exists, yeah, it does feel that way. Like I'm not allowed to talk about it at my dinner table because the people next door can talk about this topic, but I can't talk about this topic.
Yeah.
This has to do with access, right? Not having access to something that other people have access to.
Yeah. I had the question that came to my mind that I was dying to ask you when we got into this was, like, if you were, like, the chief ethics officer at Apple and this request came across your desk, like, how would you be, like, what would be the main thing? Or, like, let's say, because I think there are people that are in, smaller businesses and leading, organizations in different ways where sometimes these things come, right? And, how would you advise a company address something like this?
Mm. Wow,
From your
that's a
ethics
question I
from
could
your
ask.
ethics
Right, right. Question I could ask you too, right? Being in
for
tech.
sure.
Right. So, it really comes down to why that app was created. It was created under the feeling or the rationale that people might not be following the procedure of law to find people who are not following the law. So, like, if we look at the ethics piece here, like, you really have to think about it. It was not an app that was created to help people circumvent the law. It was
Sure.
an app that was created because there was a potential that power could get abused. And from that standpoint, think there's an ethical responsibility. This is my social justice perspective,
Mhm.
which is that, we speak truth to power. And the truth, kind of the truth here is that power is getting abused. And so that we can help people not be abused by the power that's harmful, we can help people keep away from that.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's pretty clear that there's an issue in taking this away. Once now thinking about it being developed in the first place, I mean, that's why I go back to that. The why it was being developed is really important because it wasn't developed. It's not like it's something that can teach people how to get away with being a documented alien, right? Like
Right.
how to do these 10 things so you are undetected. That's not what it's doing at
No.
all. What it does is, and it could do potentially, here's, kind of the other ethical piece of this is it could force the people in power to go to go by the procedures the way that they should be going by the procedures
Right.
and not doing things illegally. I mean, for example, there are plenty of immigrants who pay taxes. The government is not allowed to get that information. There's been a push. I don't know what's happened. I didn't follow that, but I remember earlier in the year that the administration was muscling the IRS to like share that information. So, that's the kind of situation that feels like, no, that's power that's getting
Right.
abused. How do you feel about what I'm saying?
No, I mean, it definitely resonates for me from my personal perspective. I think that, I look at it from the perspective of like what other apps, like there was a story this weekend about an off-duty CBP or ICE officer, I don't remember which, that was arrested in California for like basically doing the same thing he would do had he been on duty, but he just
Yeah.
happened to not be on duty, right? And it's like the difference between since people are like not like these officers aren't behaving in the way that we expect law enforcement to behave, right? Like
Mhm.
showing identification,
Showing
going
their
in marked
faces.
vehicles, showing the people who refuse to wear masks are now super big fans of masks, which seems really ironic to me, but
Yeah.
like it's not, they're not going about it. And like people, if you take the label off of what their vests say and you say, you could go buy that at any store, like, do we have apps that people would be able to notify each other of like armed people rolling up in their neighborhood? Yeah, we already have those apps. Like, for sure. For sure. I mean, if you are like, somebody who wanted to get your hands on vulnerable people, like this is a super, easy backstory you can adopt for it, right? Like, that's really scary.
Yeah. I want to, like, as we were talking about this other kind of thought came to mind, which is some of the, I think, like the identification theft kind of companies
Hmm.
do things where they can show you where the pedophiles live, the
For
registered
sure.
sex
The
offenders
state of
live.
Florida, I think, runs a site like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all across the country,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think there's reciprocity between states as well. Nobody complains about knowing where the pedophiles are,
Right.
like in their neighborhood. I speak to that.
Well, there are people
It's
that
not
complain, Tony, but it's the
sure,
pedophiles.
but what I yeah, let's not get into that topic in the time that we're in right
Right.
now. Um November 18th, 2025, as we're recording this. But safety, we're always looking at the mental health piece, like this intersection of technology and mental health. What are we using technology for? Can it be good? How can it be useful? Can it be bad? If it's useful, then in what ways? When we're talking about safety and people's safety and our nervous systems, living in an environment where someone can bust through the door at any time is extremely traumatic. Think of a small child who's being abused and never knows when the abuse is going to
For
happen.
sure.
Think about adults and whole families living in communities. There was just a gentleman who was in a car with his wife and his 1 or 2-year-old daughter with the window down in a Walmart parking lot, and the ICE agent sprayed, and there was video of it, pepper spray in his face, and it was in his
Ugh.
wife's face, and, it's just kind of like all over the place. The question isn't whether or not he's undocumented. Why are we treating people this way? Why are people getting treated this way? Right.
100%. It's like it's not how people should be treated. As I started to look more and more into this, that really struck me was that for a lot of people who are undocumented in this country, um, the law that they broke is a civil like infraction, like
Hmm.
a parking ticket. Could you imagine, like, if that were the consequence to parking in the wrong spot or speeding, or you know what I mean? Like, it feels like just a wild misalignment of, and I think that that's kind of the point, right? And I think that that's, I listened to a story, another great NPR podcast, This American Life,
I love
that
that
I
one.
love.
Yeah.
I love it. And this week, one of the stories was about a family who came to the decision that the dad would self-deport because they didn't want to live with the fear and the danger and the risks.
Uncertainty.
Yeah. And the
Yes.
impact, not only that had on the dad, but also his children who are, his wife, who are all American citizens. Like, this is having like a profound impact, not just
Mhm.
on because it's just not treating people the proper way. And I think when we see that in anything, like, it kind of resonates and angers us.
Yeah.
I think it's terrifying. And you think about it from like a platform perspective, or think about it from, like, let's say you anger somebody like an Elon Musk and he decides to take down your platform on X and take down your access to the internet if you're a Starlink provider, or you know what I mean, especially if you're in areas of the world that aren't served by very many other providers for things like that, right? It has a chokehold on media and information dissemination that is insidious, I think, and scary. So, what do you think are the important steps? Like, what can we do from here? Where do we go? One of the things I thought of was have a backup. If something's like important, always make sure you have like a backup like modality for it to the extent you can.
So, you're talking about, like, if we don't have the app any longer, for
Yeah, or
people
just
who don't
like
have it?
how in real life can we deal with like the idea that things that are important to us, kind of taking the perspective of the inventor of this app, right? Like looking at the landscape and saying, where is this going? And how do I protect myself and my community and the things that are important?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought of was like making sure you have that sort of backup communication network or a diversified platform presence is an important thing to do.
Yeah, there are phone like, in school, the kids had phone trees and things like that. I
Yeah,
mean, that is possible in communities to do something like that, and actually, that started before people were using the app. When I said
right.
before, like, "Oh, I had heard that people were literally calling each other
hmm
to share this information when they knew that friends or family, that ICE agents were gonna end up in their community." So people were alerting each other. I think we can still do that. We don't necessarily need the technology. The technology makes it faster
For
and makes
sure.
it accessible to more people. I'm really focused on the mental health piece of this, and the trauma that this is causing communities and families is so incredibly disturbing. So I see so much value in people really trying to support and help each other, because whether you're undocumented or not, your mental health is going to be harmed. I mean, we're talking about people, we're
For
talking about
sure.
children. And there's so much harm that can be caused here. So I really look at this as an issue of what we can do to prevent further trauma from happening.
Yeah.
And if we don't have access to the apps, then we really have to find other ways to do that.
What is your how do you like fight back against this, or what, or stand in support of the people who are affected by it? Like, what can we do to help communities that are facing this right now?
Yeah. That's a really great question. I think one thing is we're talking about it. You and I are talking. I think other people are talking about it. I love that Joshua, the inventor of the app, went on. They had interviewed him, or they had some sound bites on that podcast, really talking about it and raising awareness about the topic. And then, of course, call your Congress people and have conversations about how power is being abused. I think a lot of us are really upset. I had heard that, believe it was Spotify that has a petition out to remove job ads for ICE agents,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, because the other thing is who's getting hired. A lot of people who don't have any experience or knowledge.
Yeah, what's the training they're getting?
What's the training that they're getting? So I think we really need to continue to talk about this, and to use our voices to say this is an abuse of power, and just keep showing it over and over again.
I
How
I
about you? Do you have yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that made me so sad about this was like, remember when it was ICE doing all of this, and now it's Customs and Border Protection, and that's a whole different, scarier group to be doing this type of enforcement in places where they have absolutely no business doing this type of so I think that the idea that this is like visibly escalating in front of us in a rapid period of time is a call for concern, and I think something where you just have to keep it, like you said, sort of like front of mind, and look, we're all in community, right? If we go to the grocery store, somebody picked the food, put the food that you're eating, and a lot of those people, historically have been undocumented people who already are oftentimes living in, really vulnerable situations.
Yeah, they're at the margins.
Yeah. And so, who are the groups in your community that provide support to folks? How can you look in your where you live and provide some support and advocacy for folks so that on top of everything else that they have to deal with, you can kind of take the load off of this one piece at least, or, share it.
Peaceful protesting. We do have the opportunity to share our voice and, put on chicken costumes and unicorn costumes and have our voice be known. But I love, like, it really starts at home. Like, what is happening in your community right now?
Yeah.
As you're driving up and down the street, what do you see and how can you help protect other people? Because a lot of people say, well, it's not me, so I don't care.
Right.
But it could be.
It could be.
It really could be. And we all came from somewhere. We all had immigrant parents. So it could be our mother, it could be our father, it could be anyone in our own families. So to remember that.
Absolutely. I think you're seeing it in opposition, arrests that Kat Abu, I can't say her last name, but she's running for Congress, I think out in California. Like Comey, like we're seeing a lot of the power of the state being turned against people in frightening ways. And, we do need to push. And I think we need to, it's terrified, like push our leadership. Congress is supposed to be a check on this power, and they have failed. While I don't care if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat, Congress is failing to check like illegal activity, and that's got to stop.
Yeah, I'm with you. Definitely with you on that. But I think it starts with us too. Like how many, I called my representative for an issue several months ago. I'm not on the phone every day. I didn't call about this issue. Bad on me. Like I need to continue to get on the phone and harass, my representative about these topics. So if we do that, then Congress will get the message, right? And if enough people, their constituents complain and say, hey, you're not doing a good job, they're going to have to kind of listen to that. So we do have that. We do have our voice. We can use our voice in that way as well. So
absolutely. And I think a lot of people are realizing, the impact that some of this stuff is having away from like ideological, like things that they might have thought, versus the real impact things are having. So yeah, I think I like the idea of it coming back to community. And, one other thing I'll throw out there, there's a podcast called The Daily Beans. I don't know if you've heard it, but every day they end on a note with like some good trouble, reference to John Lewis.
How to cause good trouble.
Yeah, so they have like a little like recommendation to get into some good trouble every day. And so every once in a while, again, like I can't do it every day, don't do it every day. But, I try to at least do some of that stuff because it is important. And if we all do a little bit, it adds up to a lot. So keep fighting the good fight.
And on that note, another really good time chatting with you. I think we had some really good thoughts and recommendations. For me, it really does come back to the mental health and who's getting traumatized in this power and abuse situation, the abuse power situation. And I appreciate the kind of that tech piece in the who has access, right? And that's part of the power piece too. It was really good talking to you today, and we'll see you next time.
So thanks
Don't
so
forget
much, Toni.
to check the show notes for the donations, right?
Yep, all the good links, and like and subscribe, and we will talk to you guys next week. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.